What is the difference between gear ratio and final drive ratio? If you have ever wondered how trucks and 18-wheelers manage to pull heavy loads or cruise smoothly on highways, you are in the right place. Understanding the difference between gear ratio and final drive ratio is essential for anyone interested in truck performance upgrades. Let's break it down in simple terms. First, let's talk about gear ratio. This term usually refers to the ratio found within a specific part of the drivetrain, often the differential or axle gears. It tells you how many times the driveshaft rotates for each complete rotation of the wheels. For instance, if you have a gear ratio of 4.10, that means the driveshaft turns 4.10 times to make the wheels turn once. Higher gear ratios provide more torque, which is great for handling heavier loads or climbing steep hills. However, they can reduce fuel efficiency. On the other hand, lower gear ratios improve fuel economy, making them better for long-distance highway driving with lighter loads. Now, let's move on to final drive ratio. This term is broader and includes not just the axle or differential gear ratio, but also the transmission gear ratio, and sometimes even the tire size. It represents the total multiplication of engine rotations to wheel rotations after all drivetrain components are considered. For example, if your transmission is in a gear with a ratio of 0.83 and the rear axle gear ratio is to 0.82, the final drive ratio would be the product of these two numbers, which is approximately to 0.34. This final drive ratio changes depending on which transmission gear you select. So, what are the key differences? The gear ratio usually refers to the ratio inside the differential or axle only. In contrast, the final drive ratio includes the gear ratio plus the transmission gear ratio. This means the final drive ratio shows the complete drivetrain ratio from engine to wheels. The gear ratio directly affects torque and load handling at the axle, while the final drive ratio determines the overall relationship between engine speed and wheel speed in any given gear. For heavy-duty trucks, selecting the right gear ratio is vital for balancing power and fuel efficiency. Trucks designed for heavy loads or mountainous terrain benefit from higher gear ratios, such as 4.10 or higher, to provide more torque and better pulling power. Meanwhile, long-haul trucks that mostly travel on flat highways prefer lower gear ratios, like 3.55 or lower, to maximize fuel economy. Understanding the final drive ratio helps drivers and fleet managers know how the truck will perform in different gears and conditions. It reflects the total mechanical advantage from engine to wheels. Adjusting gear ratios and considering transmission gear ratios allows for customization of truck performance based on specific hauling needs. In essence, the gear ratio focuses on the axle or differential ratio alone, while the final drive ratio encompasses the transmission gear ratio, showcasing the complete drivetrain ratio affecting wheel speed relative to engine speed. Both ratios are essential for optimizing truck performance based on load, terrain, and driving style.